Hello gamers and welcome to Game Warp. I'm Elwood.
I'm Kim.
And today we have a very special episode as it is a double feature episode. On today's episode we will be looking at the indie racer Astral Traveler, as well as taking a look at the equally similar Aftergrinder. But first, Astral Traveler. Astral Traveler is an independent game, as we said already. This is a game developed by Dragon Slumber, who we previously did a previous episode with, where we interviewed the creator of the game, which you can find by clicking on the card. You will see it on screen now. Now, the game itself is an independent racing game, and it sees you going through 47 sectors across 5 different nebulas, so each nebula has its own distinct theme to it. This is a very game which runs at one speed, and that's just breakneck speed, as you try to avoid various obstacles, raiders, and general challenges that would stand between you and the finish line. All the while, this is a game that pits you against yourself, as you're constantly trying to knock seconds off that best run time. Now, Kim, I mean, both these games we've been playing for the last week or so. I mean, first off, we're obviously talking about Astral Traveler. What was your sort of opening thoughts on Astral Traveler?
Astral Traveler is quite unique. I mean, the music is pretty nice. It's a pretty, they have a nice build up in the first world of different skills that you have to do, whether it's how to go fast, how to do your pulsar or something through these things that you need to collect to speed yourself up. And then they gradually increase the obstacles and the things that you will see, and it adds in, eventually you start realizing it's not just something like Wipeout, where it's really just racing. It's also the fact that there's a lot of platforming in that racing as well. So it's an all-around, it's not the straightforward, just avoid obstacles moving out of your way, but you also actually have to do some platforming, and in some parts, actually, by the end of some levels, it can get pretty intense with the challenges and stuff. Obviously, games like Astral Traveler is very dependent on reflexes and stuff like that. And for myself, I'm not particularly skilled at racing games, but our stunt gamer was fantastic at it because he's used to racing games and such.
Yeah, definitely. This is a game which will certainly test your reflexes. I know I made the mistake of trying to do it on the keyboard, and certainly found out rather quickly that this is a game which really benefits from having a controller, as you certainly require that extra bit of flexibility with your movements, and it will certainly give you a little bit more control, which is certainly needed. One of the things I did find if you're trying to do this on the keyboard is that you will tend to overcompensate on corners, so more often than not you would find your ship flying off the edge of the track and find yourself having to restart again. So it's a very fast game, but at the same time it's building up nicely, so it doesn't throw you so much in the deep end and sort of leave you to sink or swim with this one. It does sort of ease you in slightly, even though you are constantly going at top speed throughout the levels. What it slowly introduces you is by reducing the amount of obstacles you're going to face to start with, and slowly increasing them and throwing in different sort of objects that you're going to have to deal with along the way, which keeps it interesting. I mean, certainly looking at this game, you wouldn't think that this is an independent game as such. I mean, it's very beautiful to look at, making it all the more surprising this is just a one-man team who's obviously developed this.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it is a one-man team, and he's teamed up with a Turkish studio to help him develop this. So it is still a small team. I mean, even if you talk about 2 dudes sitting around and just coming up with this idea and polishing it, I mean, it does have 47 levels, and I think that, that's more than enough for your average gamer, especially because, you have leadership boards and you have all sorts of things that you can really challenge yourself, and it's all around. I mean, it's a really engaging game to play. The fact that one thing I really like about games like these are, games that have frequent deaths, is the fact that it has that auto reset function where, you don't need to think about resetting yourself unless you but that's that applies only to, say, if you died, you crashed, then you would go to the retry. You get to choose if you retry or not. but it for various parts it sets you back at some checkpoint where you enter a different phase in that level. And I think that that's a pretty nice touch to the game.
Definitely so. And the quick reset on the track certainly keeps it flowing. I mean, this is a game which is ideal just to pick up and play, especially if you've got like a couple of minutes of some casual gaming or whatnot, or you just want to hit 1 or 2 levels. This is a game which perfectly lends itself to that style of gaming. At the same time, the fact that it's more focused on not only your own times but beating your friends' times, so it's all very much a time trial style game, only sort of adds to that sort of level of enjoyment. Whether this would be something that you would play for like a longer period, say like an hour or two, I think it depends more on the player and what sort of games you like to focus on when you've got those larger blocks of gaming time. But certainly this is a fun little indie title. I mean, it's an absolute steal at $5 at the moment. And you certainly get a lot of game for your $5, it has to be said, and certainly it didn't feel like we were playing a particularly small game for what you would obviously pay for this title.
So what would you rate this?
For myself, I give it a 3 out of 5. At the same time, it's a very nice sort of concept, but at the same time, it is kind of limited by its concept at the same time, and it really depends on you having the reflexes to be able to progress further. If you're kind of like myself and got all the reflexes of a squash frog, then you probably find yourself stalling on certain levels, and it can be a little bit frustrating. Again, still, if you don't own a controller, the sensitivity on the keyboard is absolutely ridiculous, and the amount of times I was just flying off the track because I'm trying to over or undercompensate did sort of take something away from it. So that would obviously stop me from rating it higher, but I think if you are the sort of person that likes this sort of challenge, then you'll probably get a real kick out of it. Certainly if you have been looking for a more modern adaptation of something like Wipeout or FX Zero, then this would certainly appeal to that nostalgic factor as well.
I'm definitely on the same wavelength as you. I think this is where we differ in the fact that we've talked off like the podcast a lot, and like I've always mentioned how I do like these sort of games. I'm not particularly good at them, but I do enjoy the grind, and I don't get very frustrated at it. One of those rare people who play Geometry Dash and find it relaxing, even if I fail 1,000 times. So for me, I would go a little higher. I'd say it's around like a 3.5. So that would be my score. Moving right along, we're going to go look at Aftergrinder. Aftergrinder is an indie game developed by Grave Danger Games, and it's currently available on Steam. It was released back in July. It's an arcade runner, and a very brutal one at that, where it is very much even more of a rage game style, where there is really no story behind it. It ranges from kind of like, it sets you in like 30 levels in each world. Currently, they have 3 worlds, so there's 90 levels in total. And they recently had the price drop to $5.50, which makes it a pretty good deal for the content it has. And you have like 3 level of difficulties where you can play with characters. So you have the dude, which is easy, the lady, which is normal. It's the one that you start with, and you have to unlock the shark after you've accomplished everything. But I mean, it's a pretty straightforward concept. I mean, it's an arcade runner. What did you think about Aftergrinder?
Yeah, I mean, Aftergrinder is a game which really is just wears its heart on its sleeve. I mean, this is a game which, looking at it, already what sort of game it is, and that is basically, it's a frustration game. It's like Super Meat Boy or The Impossible Game. This is a game that is just purely about testing your skill and patience level, to say the least, as it will basically just take great delight in beating you down. And the reset is so damn quick, it just basically pops up with the level title, and you're ready to go. It's just got such a quick reset. It's all about knocking you down and saying, you want another go? You want another go? You want another go? So this is the sort of game that we can see very much being picked up by the Twitch games in particular, who just love these sort of frustration titles. For myself, I was like, yes, it's very pretty, but at the same time, it's not giving me anything. And at the same breath, it's really the margin of error for this game is so minute. you will really find yourself being more than a little frustrated with some of these jumps and how you have to time them. Certainly there's a level where you are constantly being bombarded with laser beams and you have to time your jumps because you can't go up at the smallest ledges. You have to constantly flip up and down from the screen to avoid ledges, so you're constantly on a flat surface. So you're having to time your jump to avoid the laser and the ledge at the same time. And this is such a minute area that you can obviously hit the sort of sweet spot with, that more often than not you just like die, and it's just like, you go back to the start. There's not even like a save point part way through or like any sort of grace to it.
I think I feel that's like a two-sided thing though. Like, obviously I've already explained with Astral Traveler that I am a big fan of these games. I love games like these. I love the challenge. I love the feeling of like satisfaction when I actually pass it. And I also like the fact that Aftergrinder is like, their levels are very short. It's just because it becomes so hard that it takes so many tries. And the tries, actually your retries and your deaths, are your accomplishments, are your achievements literally on Steam. When you have certain deaths, you earn an achievement for having 500 or for having 1,000 or 5,000 or whatever, But, like, as you talked about, like, the time of perfection, most of these games are kind of like that, where, like, Geometry Dash is the same. Like, your margin of error is very, very small. And that's generally, like, how these games are built. Because if you were able to slow down your game, then there wouldn't be that challenge. And I guess the mentality behind it is that, it is to beat you down. And, I mean, that's why I feel like these games are very tough also to break into the market, because they're in such a niche market. There is only a certain group of people who will really enjoy a game that is set to break you down. Even its slogan was something like die, retry, or something like that. And it's just, like, I guess what I would have liked a little bit more was if they implemented the music and the rhythm a little bit more to say, like, how you changed it. So it would be something more like having a runner, but with a bit of the Geometry Dash type of style to it. And that would have helped to be able to, time yourself a little bit better, instead of having some fast-paced, tense music in the background, and you're playing this and you're just like, oh my God, I can't handle this anymore.
Oh, definitely. I mean, this is a game which is designed in a very simplistic way, though for some reason designers at the moment seem to be under the impression that we all crave for the days of the Amstrad and their simple graphic package. And certainly when we look at this game, it's a very simplistic graphic style that it uses. The use of purples and blacks is pretty retina burning at times, and especially if you're rubbish at the game like myself, is pretty much what you're going to be looking at as you struggle to get past those levels. The sound at the same time is again very basic. It's your usual beeps and bloops. It didn't really give me anything inspiring, and as such I found it the sort of game that you sort of dig out when you're waiting for things to download, or you got printing to do, or just like you haven't got a lot of time. You just, as I said, like with Astral Traveler, this is the sort of pick up and put down sort of game. This isn't something you're going to be playing for hours unless you're running a Twitch stream and you want people to be taking great delight in you frustrating and wanting to break your own computer.
Well, I mean, in comparison, like, I don't like comparing the games, but since we're doing a double feature of very similar, like, styles of gaming, Astral Traveler is one that I definitely could sit through a lot longer than, say, Aftergrinder. Aftergrinder has that kind of effect where, you might sit there. If you're successful, you'll sit there a little bit longer than 5 minutes. It's kind of like a 5-10 minute session where you're just kind of in between, maybe changing your palettes, maybe just like whatever, in between. I have a little bit of time to game and I want to see if I can pass this level real quick. In that sense, I actually have some feelings that Aftergrinder would have worked amazingly as like a mobile game. Just because it's simplistic and it's kind of like a little bit like it's all about very simple. You just up and down, and you can like kind of lean down or up or whatever, But I feel that there are parts I do like about this is that like the three different worlds has their own unique features to it. So they play around with gravity in the last one. They have like lasers in the second one. The first one is the most basic, where it's really adding on to the things that that you've been doing. So you every single level kind of takes you into a little bit more on like say the first 15 levels, and then it changes. So and then it like it just then after that it's really the challenging stuff that happens.
Yeah, I can't also but feel as well the way this game is sort of designed that why would you essentially pay for this game when you can obviously get something very similar on Flash? I feel that while they've obviously gone for a very retro styling, at the same time it just makes you think, well, I could obviously just fully find something very similar as like a Flash game or something which would serve the same purpose. Perhaps, I mean, as I said, maybe this is a sort of game that if you have got those reflexes to play it, that it is a much more rewarding experience. For ourselves, though, who obviously don't have hours and hours in the day just to spend finding those reflexes for this game, it's, as I say, it just proved like a more frustrating experience than I perhaps would have liked from this game. Certainly from when we saw the trailers and that, we were all very excited to play it, but when it actually came down to it and it sort of showed you all its moves within the first 3 or 4 runs of this game, it became, this is going to be something that I'm just going to pick up and play. This is more of a whim if I'm going to play this rather than a game that's going to be like my main focus for the evening.
Well, yeah, definitely. I think that is the goal of the game. I don't know if it's actually the goal, but I feel like these sort of games tend to be around that sort of style. And plus these games are meant to be frustrating. So I guess if that works, then, you like the challenge, you don't mind the frustration, then, it's really going to hit a really good chord in that sense where it's not a flawed game in any way. Like for what its intentions are, it actually accomplishes a lot of what it intends to. Yeah. It has obstacles. It gives you perfect timing that you need to have. And these games are normally set around them, and from the games I've played, this one runs pretty smoothly. So, anyways, I mean there's not really a whole lot to talk about. It really depends on the gamer for something like this, which is really brutal, really about the deaths and the retries and the frustration and like whether you can get past that and just really like savor the sweet victory when you pass the level after like 100 retries or something.
Yeah.
With that said, what would be your score for Aftergrinder?
My score for Aftergrinder, I'm going to give this again 3 out of 5. I feel that it's the sort of game that you're either going to like or not like, depending on obviously where your gaming preferences sort of lie, really. I mean, that's going to be sort of the key thing here, really. If you're the sort of gamer who likes a frustrating challenge, then Aftergrinder certainly provides that. If you're a more casual gamer, or have got slightly slower reflexes, then I can see this becoming a little frustrating, especially as you struggle to get past the first few levels. It's it's sort of one of those games that you may obviously just keep as like a party piece or something, but yeah, outside of just sort of like something I pick up and put down for like in 20-minute bursts, this didn't have any sort of lastability for myself, but at the same time I can't help but feel it's been designed in that way, so this is definitely a 3 out of 5 for myself.
I was originally going to go with 3 out of 5, but I am now, after a few days of playing this, and I've actually gone back a few times, I feel that for myself, because I am the type of person who does like this sort of games, I'm going to go with a 3.5 like Astral Traveler, just because I see the value in it, but I still feel that the factor of it being like really, really challenging and all sorts of things might not appeal to everybody. And I guess I wonder how long this feeling that I have of wanting to go back in short bursts is. And plus, a game where you can only go back in short bursts kind of lacks a little bit of longevity, because the next game that comes along where you want to play with short bursts might actually just replace it, So this wraps up this episode. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. Head over to our home base, thatmomentin.com, to read gaming reviews. To get gaming news every single day, follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook @GameWarp Podcast. hang out with us on our Twitch channel where we stream at Game Warp Podcast, and you can follow our gaming obsessions over on Instagram, instagram.com/Game Warp Podcast. Till next time, bye!